How's it going, guys? This is Victus Kane here with another World of Warships replay. This time we're going to be in the Furutaka, which is the Tier 5 Japanese cruiser. On the new, well, not necessarily new anymore, but new at the time of this replay, map, the Solomon Islands. Taking a real quick look at the matchup here. This is patch 0.41 when this game was played, so the carrier matchmaking is the 1-for-1 that it is now. But looking at the battleships, they have a pretty significant advantage. We got kind of screwed on the battleship department in this one. Even their cruisers, I think, are still pretty good when compared to ours. The Cleveland could be a little worrisome in a game like this. We do have a destroyer advantage, though, for whatever that might mean for this type of game. But I am divisioned with my buddy there, Termasil, in his Nicholas. So, getting started, my first plan is to head over to this area right here. And I'm not going to sail in there because that'll make me an easy target for destroyers. But I do at least want to try to catch any destroyers or cruisers coming through that way, because sometimes people get a little brave and want to rush through there. I do have AP loaded, so any destroyers that come through, I won't be able to do too much to them, like we'll be able to see right here, actually. So mostly I was looking for any cruisers, which is why I'm just going to keep AP loaded here and not switch to HE to take him out, or to try to take him out anyway. But it looks like he's not sticking around, so largely won't matter anyway. So usually in like the beginning of most games, I try not to commit to one direction as far as sailing all the way to the west or to the north on this map specifically. And mostly that's just to see where my team goes, where the enemy team goes, and where I could be the most useful. So I'm going to turn around here because I don't want to be the only one going south. And here's where I learned something about the Solomon Islands map, and that's this little area right here. You can actually fire over and try to hit the ships on the other side. And I didn't know that until I almost just got blasted by that Wyoming. You see, firing AP at that battleship at this range wasn't that great of a result. I got 4 hits on him and for 0 damage. And while in the Furutaka you do have larger caliber guns than the American Tier 5 cruisers, so AP actually can do a fair amount of damage to battleships. You just have to hit them at very, very flat angles, so you have to be very close, or depending on the battleship, you can be very far away and rain AP shells down onto their deck and penetrate their deck armor. You're never going to Citadel, or I shouldn't say never, you will more than likely not Citadel a battleship with your AP rounds in this thing, but sometimes you can get lucky. I think I've maybe done it once on like a Tier 3 battleship, but anyway. So this Nicholas is super brave. We'll be generous and call it that, as he overcommits through this pass here and gets caught by numerous ships of ours. Omaha shows up, and I'm going to try to fire off my HE shells to get my AP loaded, and that was a really terrible shot. I thought I could arc it over that little bit of the island there, but as you see, I just kind of redecorated the forest. So I have my AP loaded, and I'm going to sail up north, because looking at the minimap, that's where most every ship in the game is right now. And while I'm sailing up there, I want to talk a little bit about the changes that have been made to the Furutaka. In the patches before 0.41, the Furutaka was pretty terrible. super slow turning turrets, and they took forever to reload. I believe in the stock configuration they had something like almost a 20-second reload, and it was awful. But after the patch, or 0.41 came out, they buffed the Furutaka and made it a lot better. They buffed the turret rotation, the reloading speed on the guns, and they actually made it more maneuverable as well. So since then, I've actually found it to be a very fun cruiser to play. You still don't have a lot of armor, like most Japanese carriers. Your citadel is very, very easy to penetrate and runs basically the length of your entire ship. But if you angle your ship well enough against other cruisers, battleships don't really have too much of a trouble getting your citadel from any angle. But against other cruisers, if you keep your ship pretty angled, you can bounce a lot of AP shells, or at least you'll take very minimal damage. So we'll see some of that coming up here in a second. There's an Omaha sailing towards the cluster of our ships that are sort of remaining over here, and I start firing my AP rounds at him. I managed to get one citadel. I've kind of found the range here, so I'm going to go ahead and keep firing. And if you look in the bottom left, well, and here you can see my ship was very angled, and I'm turning. Well, here, I'm going to interrupt myself and just got 4 citadels on that Omaha and basically one-shotted him. But he's firing AP at me, and he didn't have very good hits, and he did very, very minimal damage. But in turning around, I did expose my broadside to him a little bit. Mostly that was just a fact of, if I hadn't have turned, I would have kept going north, and I saw all of their ships around the corner up there, and I didn't want to sail around the corner and get blasted by all their ships, so I figured I'll chance it against the Omaha by turning around, and I managed to get lucky there. So here, I'm firing AP at that New Mexico, and you can see that I am doing a little bit of damage to him with the AP shells, and so they can be effective at the right ranges against battleships anyway. So now I'm going to switch my fire to this Phoenix to try to help out the Miyogi. And I've angled my ship again, and the one thing that I really like about the Furutaka, or one of the things I should say, because I like an awful lot about the Furutaka now, is that you can keep pretty extreme angles and still fire all of your guns at the target. So that the turrets have sort of a really nice firing arc that you can use them for. So I wasn't looking at him, but I did get 3 citadels on that Phoenix and did a ton of damage to him while I fired off some torpedoes at that New Mexico, who thankfully isn't paying attention to me. And one thing I want to mention here is I am broadside to a New Mexico at 4 kilometers, but I've been paying attention to where his guns are pointed. And as soon as he starts turning his guns towards me, I'm going to angle against him, because if he had wanted to, or if he was shooting at me, he basically could have just one-shotted me from full health. At that kind of range, he wouldn't have had any trouble at all killing me. So I think a lot of this game in general is just sort of a situational awareness, I guess is a good way to put it. And not just with the mini-map, which, for those of you paying attention to that, would have seen that the carrier did in fact pop up right over there. I was more focused on that Cleveland that is coming through the center pass and thinking, do I want to go try to fight him? But instead I decide to turn around and try to head up here and go after the carrier. So we see that there is a New Mexico heading. I thought he was heading up here, because even though I just talked about situational awareness, and I couldn't tell by looking at the mini-map that he was actually sailing away instead of towards. So I fired those torpedoes kind of at nothing. And you see me here in a second, I'm holding my fire. I'm not actually shooting at that carrier. And that's because Termisil and I are in a voice chat, talking with each other, and I tell him just go ahead and take the carrier, and I'll start shooting at this New Mexico, since he was so close and could pretty easily do that. Maybe it was a bit of a mistake, just in the sense that we're letting the carrier live for even just a few seconds longer. He'll get attacks that maybe he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But I don't think that it'll be that big of an issue. He won't survive for that much longer anyway. So here is a bit of an issue that I've had happen to me sometimes, and I haven't quite figured out why. But you can see I took forever to start turning away from those torpedoes, and that was a dodge that was very, very easy to make. And I should have made it. But sometimes I've noticed that my rudder will lock, and despite the fact that I'm like holding the A or the D key, I won't be able to turn the ship. The rudder won't be moving, and in order to get it to move, I have to lift my finger up off the key and then press it back down again, and then the rudder works. And I think it has something to do with if I'm holding Alt or Tab or Control or looking through the periscope, and then I immediately like try a maneuver after exiting one of those different menus or something. I think that's when it happens, but who knows. In any case, long story short, I took a torpedo that I really shouldn't have. But I go ahead and I shoot torpedoes at this New Mexico, and again, he's pointing his guns this way, so I'm angling as much as I can. If he fires, I'll complete the angle and straighten out to him, try to dodge as much as possible, but it doesn't matter because Termisil lands a pretty good torpedo salvo against him, killing him. So now all that I can see is this Furutaka and that Wyoming down there. They have one other cruiser left, which is the Kuma. Don't know where he's at. So I figure I can charge these guys, and by the time that I get to the Wyoming, I can have this Furutaka dead, and then this Kuma shows up right over there. So now I'm moving in against these three ships, and it's just me and Termisil, and then one other destroyer, the Mutsuki over here, who's running, which means I think I'm about to become enemy number one here, and start getting focused down by three ships, which it will make surviving very, very difficult. But thankfully, the Furutaka takes a torpedo, and I want to kill him first, because the Wyoming is going to take the longest, and my plan is to just use torpedoes on him. And I'm sailing broadside to this Kuma right now, and I'm just kind of praying that he doesn't start firing AP at me. But I'm trying to kill the Furutaka, which I managed to do there, and now I'm going to switch fire to the Kuma and knock him out. I want to try to knock out guns as quickly as possible, so that way going after the Wyoming is much simpler. So I dodged the Furutaka's torpedoes, and I'm having a lot of trouble hitting this Kuma's citadel, and this little stupid island in the way isn't certainly helping things either. But I'm starting to get a little concerned, because this Wyoming, all he really needs to do is land one good hit, and that'll kill me. And I'm almost making a mistake there, forgetting that the Kuma does in fact have long-range torpedoes just like me. And in dodging those torps, I take a huge HE hit from the Wyoming, which thankfully he wasn't firing AP, because if he had been, that probably would have just killed me outright. But he knocks my engine out and sets me on fire. I fire torpedoes, and my plan now is to knock out the Kuma and hope that my torpedoes can get the Wyoming, because I'm not going anywhere. My repairs, I used them earlier to put out a fire, and this match will end before my engine comes back. But I land one torpedo hit, get the citadel that I needed, or that I needed before on the Kuma, and I am at 748 health, less now, and the fire just goes out. I'm at 380 health. This Wyoming is so hurt, and I kill him right as his shells are on their way to me, barely surviving that game. That said, I don't think that any of the crew members of that particular Furutaka will be retelling the story of that battle anytime soon, or ever. But in any case, hope you guys enjoyed the battle, and I'll catch you in the next one.